My name is Donnie Bird, and I am the Community Involvement Coordinator for Adult and Senior Programs. And on behalf of our distinguished director, Dr. Maria Lawson, and the Houston Public Library, again, we do welcome you to our One Houston, One Book event. One Houston, One Book is a special citywide program that promotes literacy, diversity, and community conversations by encouraging Houstonians to come together, read, and discuss books with a common theme. The theme for this initiative is Diverse Stories for a Diverse City, and it features 3 book selections, one for children, teens, and adults. Today, we are very honored to have the author of one of the selected titles for One Houston, One Book, Ms. Maria Hinojosa. And we also welcome Dr. Gabriela Ventura, who will be in conversation with Ms. Hinojosa this morning. So once again, we welcome both of you here, and we thank you all for joining us today. And before we get started with the conversation, I would like to start with brief biographies for both the author and the moderator. And we'll start with Ms. Maria Hinojosa. Maria Hinojosa is an award-winning journalist who, for nearly 30 years, has reported on stories and communities in America that often go ignored by the mainstream media. From tales of hope in the South Bronx to the unseen victims on the War of Terror and the first detention camps in the U.S. Best-selling author Julia Alvarez has called her one of the most important, respected, and beloved cultural leaders in the Latinx community. Our guest moderator today is Dr. Gabriela Ventura. Dr. Ventura is Associate Professor of Spanish with a specialization of U.S. Latinx literature in the Department of Hispanic Studies at the University of Houston. She is the Executive Editor at Arte Público Press, the premier U.S. Latino publishing house, and co-founder of the U.S. Latino Digital Humanities Center. Dr. Ventura has published on various aspects of U.S. Latino literature and digital humanities, including women, immigration, recovery works, language, and young adult and children's literary production. She is also an advisor to the National Historical Publications and Records Commission, the American Council of Learned Societies, and the National Endowment for the Humanities on U.S. Latinx Archives and Digital Scholarship. Ladies and gentlemen, let the conversation begin.
Thank you very much. Welcome everybody. Bienvenidos. Buenos días o buenas tardes. Es un placer estar aquí con todos ustedes. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Thank you to the Houston Public Library for this wonderful invitation. And like I said when I shared this, that I was going to be doing this on social media. And it has been it's an extreme privilege for me because, like for many of you, I listen to Maria Hinojosa on the radio on a daily basis, and on my walks, when I'm doing many things at home, studying, share the information with our students. So it's a double honor in that sense, and a lot of respect for the work that you've been doing, Maria. So the way that I think what we're going to structure this is I'm going to ask a few questions, and then we'll flow from that into questions from the audience. And so, feel free to, as when I open the door to have questions from you, to just raise your hand and if speak loudly so that we can hear your question, and then Maria will kind of have the opportunity to answer them. So I wanted first to start by saying, Maria, that when I read your book, the one concept that immediately struck me was el mirar, la mirada, the seeing, right? And so I wanted first to thank you for being that mirada, right? For seeing, because I wanna speak beside what you said. You said that you, in seeing yourself, right, you see others. And Maria tells us that at one point, she saw herself as Maria, the Pan-Latin American, feminist, artist, political activist, radio show host, influencer, community creator, intellectual, but also anti-intellectual, with a growing spiritual exploration into Santeria. So I fully want to go there in that intersectional feminism, right, as Latinas. Right? Can you talk a little bit about when you came to that realization that you were seeing yourself within all of that in one person?
First of all, it's great to be back in Houston, which, by the way, is the center of the national media right now is talking about your city and what's happening here, what's happening in your libraries. And so I kind of feel like what we're doing is very radical and also not, because we're just having a conversation in the community about writing and books and cultura, and that anybody would sense that there's a challenge to anything by what we're doing is frankly surprising, or not. But I'm so thrilled. This poster is really one of my all-time favorite posters. I just posted it on my Instagram because I love it so much. I love all of the other writers. I've known Youssef for about 20 years. I'm trying to remember when I first met him. He had been out of prison for just maybe 5 years. So he had still not been completely cleared of everything. There was a lawsuit, of course, there was a major multi-million-dollar lawsuit that they ultimately won. So it's really a beautiful thing for me to be asked to come to this city with these authors behind me. So how did I come to be that person? I think that's the whole book, right? It's like it starts, I remember, I'll shout her out, Beatriz Nava, who is a Mexican woman who lives right now in Tasco, por ahí, no sé. But she was the first Mexicana in the United States who I saw who was all of that, although not a budding spiritual experimenting into Santeria and such. But yes, we were in Chicago, but Beatriz kind of showed me like, no, you can be Mexicana and you can be feminist. My mom too, obvio, pero as somebody who was young, who I could relate to, I went to her house and her house it was filled with art, and I was like, so I can be an artist too. So esa cultura también reflects in my artistic vision, right? I ended up marrying an artist. His name is Herman Perez from the Dominican Republic. I think that was the beginning, was seeing her and saying, wow, there's a life for me as a feminist Latina, feminist Mexicana, who owns her own voice. And then, of course, it's life, right? Every turn is teaching you another part of yourself and how to find yourself. And by putting it, because I don't sit around and read my books, so I'm like, wow, that was a good sentence. I was inspired that day. I love putting it down like that so that it reflects back to you. Maybe you're not all of those things, but you're like, no, but I'm this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And it's like, I too can kind of take ownership of my identity, and that is the great journey that we're all on.
Yeah, and that's precisely why I mentioned it, because a lot of times in this space, a lot of times we're made to believe that we can only be one thing and not the other, right? So from there, like, when you jump into the concept and the metaphor of the golondrina, I thought that was really powerful, the golondrina, the swallow, right? We've heard that so many times, that las golondrinas, that's played in our Mexican families. And the way Maria ties it into her story solidifies, right, the identity that we carry ourselves as Latinos, or even if we're not Latinos, that we bring from our cultural heritage. It doesn't leave us, right? A lot of times we're forced through citizenship and through belonging to a nation. It's like trying to be like that needs to be like shut out of us, right? That's why this concept resonated a lot to me.
And it's so interesting that you would bring up La Golondrina, because if you haven't read the book, not really revealing, but the song La Golondrina was sung to me by my cousin Sergio, who right now is actually the opposite of who I am. So he's patriarchal. He nationalistic to a point where it's Mexicano, México para los mexicanos, right, which is a very closed perspective. He's kind of like a Mexican Trumpy. He is ultra Catholic, ultra. So the fact that I talk publicly about having had 2 abortions, we've never sat down to talk about this. But he sang me that song. He gave me the concept. And in the writing of the book, I was like, oh, now I understand why I've become a birder. Right? Birds have always been symbolic, I just didn't know it. You know this saying in Spanish, in Mexican Spanish, no hay mal que por tiempo venga. It's one of my favorite sayings, and I feel like you bringing this out, it's like, bueno, Sergio, I'm going to use it. I'll be in touch with him today. I'll make a commitment to just be like, Sergio, to come. We started this conversation in Houston with your concept. To always keep the possibility of meeting someplace, because he can't dismiss me entirely. I'm his little primita. But I am who I am, right?
And that whole, when you describe that whole scene with the golondrina and the power of identifying yourself with an animal that is so free, right, that crosses borders, and then you carry that knowledge, right, that heritage with you, and that is empowering, and yeah, it's exactly what you said about how we can meet with the opposite, with those who think differently from us. It's so empowering because it gives us a hope that, things are not so, terrible, right? That there's always the opportunity for conversation, right? And that we have the power to turn things around. That's why I think it's so important how Maria, I think it's in the middle of the book when you identify with, it gives us that description of who she is, and then you jump into one of your major positions as in NPR. And I think having that ownership, right, allows you or allows a person to understand, right, that they're empowered to do that. So let me go ahead and jump on to another question that I have. I started off with 20 questions, and then I kind of brought it. Yes, so thinking still about the concept of la golondrina, I want to ask you, I want to tie this into your definition of what does it mean to be Latino in America, because when your cousin gets upset with your mom, right, and he tells her you have no right to have an opinion about what is happening in Mexico because you're an American now. Right, and so I think it invites us to begin to think about what is a Latinoamericano, what is a Latino, what is the concept of American?
So we all understand, right? Latino only exists in the United States. So if you're in Mexico, you're not going to say, "Pues soy Latina," because you're Latin American. Obvio, soy Latinoamericana. So it's important to understand that the concept of Latino, Latinidad is really a U.S. concept. And for me, it's one where I understand that all Latinos and Latinas struggle with our identity because we have to understand that we are the subject in modern America to be targeted. Right? You had a presidential candidacy built, an entire campaign built and launched on hate speech aimed at someone just like me, right? So you also understand that there are people who are going to say, well, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be the thing that is being targeted. So I will, and this is the great challenge for Latinidad in the United States, and particularly in Texas right now, right? Which is, how do Latinos identify kind of not only from a question of race, but how does that understanding then manifest in terms of the political decisions that you make, right? So in the book, my father, may he rest in peace, when he gets to South Texas for the first time, and he has to make this horrible decision that is placed in front of him by a modern American society that he thought was advanced, and suddenly he's like, am I going to the white bathroom or to the colored bathroom? And he was like, I think it hurt him deeply because he chose privilege, right? He was like, I think I can pass. So, and I think that part of him understood, so then where do I exist? So where does a Mexican man exist who's brown? Will there eventually be a door that says, Mexican, white, Mexican, black, etc.? He understood. So the great challenge for us right now is the decision for many Latinos and Latinas who will choose privilege and therefore choose whiteness and everything that comes with that. So for me, I'm a professor, so I'm Mexican, like many of you. That means I never say no to work, so I have 16 jobs. One of them is being a college professor. And I see many of my students who are like, well, am I Latina enough? Can I identify this? Even my own daughter? I'm like, so this is ridiculous, right? We need to understand that there isn't a litmus test, that there isn't like, oh, Maria Hinojosa, who does Latino USA, will be sitting at the top of the hill and she'll say, you're Latino, but you're not. O sea, eso no existe, right? Just like you don't have Walter Cronkite at the top of the hill saying, you're objective, but you're not. Like, it doesn't exist. So we have to have a conversation about our pan-Latino, Latina identity, right? Because I'm Mexican, but I married a man from the Dominican Republic. Scandalous in Mexico at the time. To be honest, a black indigenous man, it was scandalous. So we have to talk about these things and have these conversations within our own household. I know you do, but we all do. So that our kids, etc., have a concept for like, well, we can talk about this. It's not something that I have to have the perfect answer. Or if I don't like Selena, then it means I'm not Latina. It's like, I'll never forget when I called Sandra Cisneros, this was before she was a friend of mine, I called Sandra to ask her opinion about Selena and her death. And Sandra was like, I don't have an opinion. I don't listen to Selena. She's very honest. She's like, No, I wasn't, I'm not she probably is a Selena fan now, but at that moment. And so that doesn't make her any less Latina, right? So we ourselves have to have a certain fluidity in terms of how we are open and accepting, although I have had situations where there are white women who claim Latinidad that they're not. And this is obviously something that is just, it's like, why? Appreciate being a good ally and experiencing and giving solidarity, but you don't have to, you can say, I wish I was, but you don't say I am, because you're disempowering people by doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been thinking about the power that, that literature and culture has in the capacity to act as a tonic against racism and xenophobia. I see it a lot when we listen to Latino USA and how empowered we are when we learn about, the different histories, right? Other communities who are experiencing similar situations, or even things that we never knew existed, right? Why do we find ourselves in a world, right, where being labeled immigrant feels just so negatively charged?
Because we're living in a world where being immigrant is demonized now. And all of us have a role to play in changing that. So please don't think that there's no puedo hacer nada, there's nothing I can do. We all have to do it. Is it exhausting and tiring? Absolutely. I mean, it's actually been more than 30 years that I've been in this career, right? So the thought that at this point in my career I'm having to basically do basic education, like, no, Mexican immigrants are not criminals. No, we're not all drug dealers. No, not Central Americans are not freeloaders, etc. Any of these concepts. So it's horrible. It has happened on our watch. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit, because we could spend a whole hour just talking about this, but I'm going to give you a little slice, and thank you for calling out the work of Futuro, because you're right. We stand for challenging that narrative actively, just because of who we are and the kind of newsroom that we run. So I imagine, I'm like, okay, so how would there have been a different outcome? Well, if we had true diversity in our media, in our mainstream media, because I am part of the diversity in mainstream media, but if we had really true representative media. So right now, almost all, I would say all of the mainstream media that we all consume, and I'm talking about major newspapers, networks, television networks, even radio, etc., owned and operated, and the buck stops with white men who present heterosexual, maybe not, of ridiculous privilege, often from the Ivy League, who live in a bubble, which I understand, right? I know their bubble. I come in and out of their bubble, right? But it is a bubble. And they are all raised, because they're my age, right? So they've been raised during a time when the only messaging they've gotten about immigrants through the mainstream media was from other white men who were also equally terrified or fed the knowledge, or not the knowledge, fed the lie that immigrants are a problem. Because remember, this was happening when the Jews were being assassinated in a Nazi Germany. This country was saying, well, no, we don't like the Jews. We don't like the refugees. It happened again, we witnessed it with the first televised refugee crisis, right, in Vietnam. We witnessed it. We don't want them. We don't want it. What did they label them? A horrific term, which is a hate term. Boat people? That my colleagues then repeated? That would be like putting the refugees right now who are forced to sleep on the sidewalks in Mexico, right on the other side, concrete people, sidewalk people. Horrific. Entonces, they have repeated these narratives about immigrants, refugees, being too much. Now, let's imagine another world. Let's imagine a situation where the headlines by my colleagues in the newspaper would look like, try to come up with Vietnamese refugees arriving to the United States are going to be bringing such an important part of historical context. Think about all of the possibilities that we will have to understand our global position in the United States with the arrival of Vietnamese refugees. What a boon is it going to be to our American society to be able to interact with people who we went to war with? Now we're going to be able to see them as our allies. Think about, okay, so that's one headline. It's a long headline. Oh my God, another headline. The people of Bangladesh will be arriving in the United States because of climate change. So it's horrible. But oh my God, the people of Bangladesh are going to bring incredible understanding of architectural diversity. They understand how to build homes. I'm making this up, etc. Let's have a competition for which city or town gets to receive the 5,000 refugees at the border. We are actually going to have a competition because we're going to follow that story. You're going to find, we're going to show to America, yet over and over again, what happens when you have 5,000 refugees come into your town. Oh my God, it becomes the coolest time to hang out in, the best place to eat, the best parties, etc., etc. Hold on, this just I got so excited. Houston did not, honestly, Houston was not that cool before. I'm sorry, it was okay. Houston now is cool, right? Like the African refugees that I met when I would come here decades ago, now they all have family here. They're your neighbors. Like the Vietnamese arrivals here, who are now an integral part of your city. So imagine those headlines. If my colleagues, the white men, who live in that bubble, if they actually would open their eyes to see the reality of the experience. Imagine what our country would have looked like if the narrative had been around, oh my God, immigration is such an important part of our country. We love it, and they're so fabulous, and the Statue of Liberty was right. Imagine where we would be. I don't, I'm going to imagine that world. I'm trying to make it happen in my own news media company, which is a nonprofit, so you can always donate to the media. Monthly is great. It's what I do, right? I just do a monthly to the few nonprofits that I just do a monthly donation, and then I don't have to worry about it, and it means a lot to our organizations.
Right, and it's that one action that we can take as citizens, who are living and sharing this world with these communities that continue to be invisibilized, right? Or continue to, or where there's still a power, right, that is still pushing to not make these communities visible. Because if we make them visible, then we will have to we will have to figure out a way to understand the power that they have had and the influence that they have had into building the country that we know and love as the United States, right?
And still, so just a couple of data points for you. So Latinos and Latinas, we have this, if our gross domestic product was measured, it would be the 7th largest in the world. We have ridiculous consumer power. And I know my students are like, I don't care, I'm not a capitalist, I don't care. But it is a real power, right? We know that Latinas are the most sought after consumer because we over-index in our homes over white women and black women in terms of deciding what will be bought in the home. And we're brand loyal. We're brand loyal, right? So, que Dios me salve si mi mamá ve que I'm not using the same paper towel that she talked about. Latinas are brand loyal. Latinos and Latinas are holding up the U.S. housing market. We are buying more and more houses. And, you know this, we build the houses. So we literally are propping up the housing market. Latinos and Latinas have the highest rate of going straight from high school to college. We've surpassed white kids in going straight from high school to college. Latinos and Latinas actually, regardless of the horrific Supreme Court decision, once known as the highest court of the land, we can't, right? We see the level of corruption, and it is horrifying. But many Hispanic-serving institutions understand that their only business plan for the future is accepting more kids of color, right? So we have extraordinary power. We are the 2nd largest voting cohort in the United States. What happens in our democracy, as learned and taught by black women, right? We have to follow in that tradition, in owning our democratic power. And the most minimal, to vote. But I was not a citizen until I was almost 30. So there are other ways of taking part in democracy that are not just limited to democracy. So all of us have a right to be part of changing that narrative and correcting the narrative with the truth. Right? So for example, oh my God, Latinos are so dangerous. This notion that like we're so dangerous. I'm like, well, let's go hang out in Houston. I bet that the Latino neighborhood, which is like everywhere, right, is like the coolest places to be, right? So, base it on empirical reality, empirical fact. We also know that there is less crime in immigrant communities than in U.S.-born communities. That's a fact. So all of these facts, these data points, which are easy to find, we need to have as part of our conversation.
Right, and I think when you read Maria's book, you will see that it is filled with a lot of this data, with a lot of historical facts, right, that we have not have had access to. And when we ground it on that, we're able to begin to see how these narratives have been shaped around creating these spaces that create negativity for the Latino community in current times. I want to end my part with one question that I think is really powerful, because I have my colleagues, several of my colleagues here with me who I respect so much, and my little sister. We have a hashtag that we use that's called "A mí me cuidan mis amigas," right? "A mí me cuidan mis amigas." We started a colectivo feminista here in Houston to talk about empowering women, and what I really felt so empowered by your work and your book is the fact that when you make it into NPR and they tell you, oh, wow, I wonder if there are more like you, your response is like so amazing and like empowering. You say, yeah, I made it, but there's not that I'm just the only one who made it. There are many of us that have been here, that are doing this work, that you don't get to see, right? And so I just want to refer to page 137, chapter 8, because I'm like academic, I have to say. He said, it's just this whole narrative about not killing the father figure. We're here to share the space. We're being told that there are only 3 positions that we 3 Latinos have to fight for it. On the contrary, there's, the pie is huge. We can all eat from it, right? And so when Maria, talks about there were so many other models that had been there, that had been doing this work. We're standing on the shoulders of the people that came before us, right? I sit on the shoulders here at the University of Houston at the recovery program. We have archives of Latinos who have been in the U.S. and done so much work. And I see this represented in Maria's work because she's citing her colleagues, right? You're mentioning all the other people that came before you. So she says, women supporting women. She begins to see Latina journalists. They said there was such a way in which they moved, they revealed their, and I quote, humble, badassery, chingona, afro, taína, princess, guerrera, shit, names with humility, only to some, because to let down our warrior faces and to display our vulnerability to everyone might take away our superpower to survive. There were just enough of us so that we had a mirror to hold up ourselves. Imagine that, right?
So that is a section of the book where I'm talking about how a group of Latinas and myself formed our own feminist colectiva called LIPS, Latinas in Power, sort of. Because we formed 30 years ago, and a lot of us were starting in our career. Now many of us have, actually some have started to retire, but they excelled at the highest level of their career. And so we had a group of Latina journalists where we were able to see ourselves in each other. And we're still in touch. We have a fabulous WhatsApp group that goes through it. And it was a way in which we were able to come together and give ourselves a view of how to do it. So this is something, the visual, right? Because when I was growing up watching TV, there were no Latinas on television here in the United States. And in the writing of the book, I was like, actually, the women who inspired me to become journalists were in Mexico because there were Mexican women journalists on radio and TV, interestingly. So for me, visually, being on television or on the radio was always about, because of course you can't see me on the radio, so I can't wear my hoops on the radio. But I could say Maria Hinojosa. And in saying my name the way it was meant to be said, it was communicating something, right? And on television, to present it the way I present, which is obviously with the hoops or something else. But it is a way to say I don't look like everybody else, and yet you can be here too. So it is about saying, estamos aquí, right? We're here, we are present. That you don't see us is a problem, but we are here, and we cannot internalize that invisibility.
And I think it works towards fighting any issues with like imposter syndrome, right? Have that network.
Yeah, and interestingly, the fact that I write a lot about imposter syndrome in this book is something that a lot of women have connected to. And that's my great editor, Michelle Mulligan, Irish-Mexican from Chicago. She, when I have it in the book, which is a painful thing, right, to write a book, it is not easy. I handed it in. She was like, oh my God, Maria, thank you so much. This is great. It looks good so far. You gave us 200,000 words. We only needed 100,000. What? But you know this. We are so filled with our own insecurities that I overperformed, right? 100,000 6,000 extra words. And she was like, I'm going to do surgical removal, which included at least one lover. But she was able to see these themes, like, for example, the imposter syndrome, and she was able to give that a kind of clarity, which really worked with so many of the readers.
So should we open it up for questions from the audience? And I think we have microphones on the side.
Oh, yeah.
So if you'd like to ask a question, we do have microphones on either side. And also, we do have online viewers. We do have online viewers, so if we have time, we'll also take questions from them as well.
Hi, my name is Maria Hinojosa. 20 years ago, I temporarily worked as a producer for Maria Hinojosa for USA. And so I would like you to speak as a Latina journalist specifically about Futuro Media and the recent investigative story that you took a year to produce.
No, thank you, Mamita.
Called
Immensely Invisible.
Called Immensely Invisible about, and I work for the Southern Poverty Law Center for the Immigrant Justice Project, and so this is about one of our stories that she brought to light that you can still hear on air, and it is about the sexual assault at Stewart Detention Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamita. It's good to see you, and I'm so glad you're working for SPLC. They do such important work. I've known Anna for a long time. And so it's great that, again, you can be a journalist of conscience, right? And you operate in this world as a journalist of conscience. And Anna knows that in 2011, we produced, I was the first Latina to anchor a frontline documentary. It's called Lost in Detention. And it was the first time that cameras went inside these detention camps, frankly, concentration camps. They don't lead to death always, the way concentration camps did, but sometimes they do lead to death. So at that time, I uncovered this story. It was 2010. 2011, Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois goes to the Senate floor and says, after this frontline, we have to provide protection to immigrants in detention. They should also be covered under the Prison Rape Elimination Act, which then takes until 2017 to get enacted. So you have 6 years in which, and a young, professional, established journalist in India who is coming to Columbia University to get a master's sees my front line in India, becomes obsessed with this issue, comes to New York, starts researching this for her to do her master's thesis, meets me on campus and says, this is what I'm doing, and I said, let's do this together. Let's work together to turn the story around. And so that, it actually was 2 years of investigating, and it was so traumatic. It was so difficult. Now, I don't want to focus just on the negativity. One of the things that we did with this story is we're highlighting the fact that these women had agency. They stood up and complained and filed complaints and are in a legal battle which may not turn in their favor. But we wanted to not celebrate, but to point out journalistically the amount of power that they did have in standing up and kind of centering their voice and their experience. And the title, Immensely Invisible, came from one of the women survivors. The horror of what's happening in these detention camps, which are everywhere around us, is that it goes with impunity. And one of the things that we uncovered with this reporting is that they have another way of dealing with this, which is to transfer the women who are complaining. You just transfer them from one unit to another. You move them around like chess pieces, and therefore it's more difficult for them to actually speak up. It's a way in which ICE, again, doesn't investigate. And by the way, ICE investigates themselves. We've reported on that as well. And also, you should know that ICE, Border Patrol, these are the largest law enforcement agencies in our country. Border Patrol is majority Latino or Latina. So there is work to be done. So anyway, the question is that they agreed to speak with us, and they shared with us their horrific stories of being sexually assaulted by a nurse. a male nurse, at a moment when they were actually in some cases not actively looking to see the nurse, but they were then forced to see the nurse. One of them was given a pill, and then she had an extraordinary allergic reaction. She had to go see the nurse, and this is when the nurse takes advantage of her. The other one is told that she has TB. She doesn't have TB. Forced to go see the nurse over and over again. Will there be any justice for them? I don't know. But one of the things that my investigative unit has committed to doing is to not turn away from the stories that many of our colleagues are like, oh, immigrants dying in the desert? It happens all the time. It's not a story. We did that story. It's called Death by Policy. It shows how the Border Patrol actually has policies that are leading to death. And we just won our first Investigative Reporters and Editors Award for that. We are doing a piece on this, on the question of immigrants being sexually assaulted. Many of my colleagues are like, what's the story? It's not you. So, no me callo. No me callo. I will not stop. The stories that you think are not, are old and been there and done that, we will keep going back to reveal these deep injustices that are being affected on our bodies, and the litmus test is because we were born here. That's why we, and I include myself, that could happen to me because I wasn't born here. And this is a horrific thing for our country.
Yeah. Tell them how they can listen.
Oh, thank you. You can listen by going to methodusa.org or wherever you get your podcasts. The audience. So a lot of people, I find it fascinating that a lot of people are like, oh my God, I love listening to you on Sunday mornings. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but you can listen at any time. Just go to your podcast feed, and if you don't know, ask somebody to show you how to start a podcast feed. It's on your phone. I don't judge anybody if they've never listened to a podcast. I'm just like you, but I'll teach you how. Thank you, Anna, for calling it out, because you're right. It's there. You can listen to it, and tomorrow morning I'll be on El Punto. Not with Jorge Ramos, he was on vacation, but with Ilia Calderon. Aquí entre nos, I find it interesting. Ilia is standing in for Jorge. And I'm like, would Jorge have had... I know that Jorge listened to the documentary, was very impressed. But the fact that Ilia is angry, it's because she's a woman. And she identified so deeply with what we put in this piece. And I'll just tell you that I, as the senior journalist at my own company, I was the one that said we are going to keep the women talking about the abuse. Not to make it, as we say, amarillista or yellow journalism or just shock journalism. It's because you have to listen to it. You have to listen. You have to hear. And that's why we decided to keep their voices being very specific about what kind of abuse they were subjected to. Thank you, Anna.
Hi, Maria. I'm not sure if you remember me, but we met at Free Spirit last month.
Okay, what's the...
This is BC. This is, I'm Ishad from Houston.
Oh,
Right next to the lunch here.
Things happen. You just never know where you're gonna run into. It's nice to see you in Houston.
Yes, things come full circle.
Okay.
But my question was, in every piece of journalism that you've done, and I almost obsessed with this just walking out, that whole podcast is on the loop for me. All of your writings have this beautiful mix of head and heart in them, and every story holds so much meaning. So, as a budding journalist myself, any words of wisdom as to how to balance that head and heart to make effective journalism?
So Ishan is a budding journalist. That's why he was in Washington with me when I received a beautiful award from
Freedom Forum.
Freedom Forum. See, it's the Al Newhart. I know the piece. It's the Al Newhart award from the Freedom Forum, and that's when we first met. So, in the book, I actually kind of reveal who taught me how to do this. And it's actually Scott Simon, a white guy who I worked for. But because I was Scott Simon's producer as a budding journalist, I saw how Scott, as a white man, allowed himself that that ability to be emotionally connected to his subjects. And so I would see when Scott would put his hand on someone's shoulder, and I was like, he just touched someone. Oh, he just shed tears, he's listening. And so I was like, well, if Scott can do it, so can I. So that's when I was like, I've always known that I wanted to use my heart, but now I know that he can do it, and nobody says he's bad for doing this, therefore. So the fact that a white man kind of opened the door for me to understand that I could do this was, it's important for me to stress that. Then, with my own company, we don't say, like, every story must have heart. You must have heart. Go take the story back and increase the heart component. It's not like that. But the newsroom is run in an understanding where using your heart is part of our editorial process. They see me, right? I kind of embody that in the work, and so therefore they understand why they can do it. And the reason why Fruitful Media connects with people like you, Sean, is, I believe, because our journalists actually bring the heart. And it's something that we like to connect to. So I'm about to reveal something that is going to horrify some of you, maybe not. So I do have to, when I'm on the road like this, and I've been on the road for 2 weeks now, too many airport hotels, whatever. But one of the things that I do is I do watch silly television series, because I have to disconnect. For me, podcast is often work, right? So something that I'm not having to work at is a television series, and so I don't know how it happened, but I'm watching Jack Ryan. Tom Clancy. It's not right. Okay. But it's actually very interesting. There's an element of heart in all the machine guns and all that. Right? So that's what we do that. You connect with a character through their heart, right? And so, to me, the world of journalism, why Suave connected with you, is because we allowed Suave's heart to connect. And I'm just going to give you a preview, because we were on a major editorial meeting with the Suave team yesterday. If you haven't listened to Suave, oh my God, you're in for a treat. Go and just put in Suave, like the shampoo, wherever you get your podcasts. And you're going to be on this incredible ride, this bingeable ride with Suave. Bueno, we just found out that a major part of Suave Season 2 just dropped out. I can't tell you anything more. We were focusing on a particular story, and as the world of journalism goes, this person just said, no more. We have like a major problem, but we're journalists. And so what I said to Suave, I said, Suave, the one thing that I want to know is if you're going to be prepared to talk about what's happening in your heart in Season 2. Are you going to be prepared to talk about looking for love, trying to find love? And Suave said, everything except for one conversation that we had on Valentine's Day in a steakhouse in Dallas, everything except for that conversation is game to talk about his heart. And so Season 2 will bring in even more heart, because Suave is a free man. Pero él quiere amor. He wants a love. And in some ways, until he finds that love, he's still in prison. And so we, again, just yesterday in the editorial meeting, it's like, we're bringing the heart. Suave is now a producer on Season 2, which is why I could ask him, producer to producer, are you prepared to talk about this? To which he said yes. So it's coming up. And for you, just listen to that guy. Listen to the heart. It may get edited out a lot, because you're going to have editors who are like, what? Don't worry. Keep on putting it in. And then when you're the big boss, you'll know what you have to do. Thank you so much, Ishan. Good to see you.
Energy in this room has been wonderful, wonderful, and as much as we would love to take more questions, unfortunately, we do have to wrap it up. However, I wish we could. We will have a time book signing in the back. So we have, first of all, we have Brazos Bookstore who is here. So if you want to purchase books, you'll be able to purchase books. And also the author will be in the back next to the bookstore signing books. So if you would like your book signed, that'll be a great opportunity to get your book signed. And because of time restraint, we do ask that only books are signed. So I do want to go ahead and give some acknowledgments. And we want to, first of all, this conversation, the energy, the questions, you all, both of you have been phenomenal. That's the word, phenomenal. You've been a fearless, tireless fighter and a voice for the voiceless, and also a push for positive cultural change. The work that you're doing is amazing. I'm inspired. I've been reading, listening to your book, and the more I listen, the more I'm like, just want to talk about it. That's it right there. So we'll always appreciate everything that you do and that you're continuing to do. And Dr. Ventura, we also thank you for your advocacy of the Latinx community and all that you do on University of Houston campus, for the city of Houston, and global. We thank you so much for all that you do. And we would also like to thank, we have special guests in the back. We have the Mexican consulate. So we have Miss Maria Hinojosa. She is here. So as you begin, once you make your way to the back, please make sure you stop at the table to visit her. So before we wrap this up, I would like to let you all know that we do have designated staff available to assist with the lines, to give you the direction that you need. And if you've been enjoying the One Houston One Book program, please let us know. We do have an online survey by way of a QR code. We do have it at the entrance. So your feedback is very important because we want to continue to have events like this. So make sure you fill it out for us. We'd love to hear from you. And at this time, if you also would like to learn more about Houston Public Library and the current initiative, One Houston One Book, please visit us online at www.houstonlibrary.org. We thank y'all for coming to fill the room, and we'll see you next time.